So, let's get started.
Operation MKULTRA. Why did the CIA secretly drug American citizens and call it science? Operation MKULTRA was one of the most secretive and controversial programs in American history. Conducted by the CIA during the early years of the Cold War, it was designed to explore methods of mind control, interrogation, and psychological manipulation, all in the name of national security. Officially approved in 1953, MKULTRA aimed to understand how human behavior could be influenced or controlled using drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and psychological conditioning. The program was born out of fear that enemies like the Soviet Union or China had already developed ways to control human minds, and the U.S. didn't want to fall behind. Under MKULTRA, CIA scientists carried out hundreds of classified experiments, often on unwitting subjects, including soldiers, prisoners, and civilians. They tested substances like LSD to see if they could make people more suggestible, erase memories, or break down personalities during interrogation. Most of these experiments took place in secret research centers, hospitals, and even universities across the country. In some cases, test subjects were never told what was being done to them, a clear violation of ethical standards that would later cause national outrage. For years, the true scale of MKULTRA remained hidden behind layers of government secrecy. But in 1975, after congressional investigations and whistleblower testimonies, the shocking details were finally revealed to the public. Thousands of documents had already been destroyed, but what remained painted a disturbing picture of unchecked power and moral compromise. Operation MKULTRA was officially shut down, but its legacy continues to haunt discussions about ethics, consent, and the limits of government experimentation. It stands as a chilling reminder of how far the pursuit of control can go, and how easily the line between security and science can blur in the shadows of secrecy. Operation Paperclip. Why did America secretly hire Nazi scientists and call it progress? Operation Paperclip was one of the most secret intelligence programs ever launched by the United States. At the end of World War II, as Nazi Germany collapsed, American officials discovered a hidden opportunity and a moral dilemma. The world had just witnessed the horrors of Nazi science, but behind those atrocities stood some of the most brilliant scientists of the 20th century. Officially approved in 1945, Operation Paperclip was designed to recruit German scientists, engineers, and technicians who had worked for the Nazi regime and bring them to the United States. The goal was simple: to use their expertise to advance American technology and gain an edge over the Soviet Union during the early years of the Cold War. Over 1,600 German specialists were secretly transported to America under this program. Many of them had worked on advanced weapons, rocketry, and chemical research during the war. Among them was Werner von Braun, the rocket engineer who had developed Germany's deadly V-2 missile, and who would later become the architect of NASA's Saturn V rocket, the one that sent humans to the moon. But Operation Paperclip came with deep controversy. Many of these scientists had been members of the Nazi Party or had worked directly under the SS. To bring them safely into the U.S., officials sanitized their records, removing or rewriting details of their past to make them appear less connected to war crimes. The program was kept secret for years, hidden from the public, and even from parts of the government. Its existence wasn't fully acknowledged until decades later, when declassified documents revealed how far the U.S. had gone to secure scientific talent, even at the cost of moral compromise. Operation Paperclip played a major role in shaping modern science, technology, and space exploration. It helped the United States build missiles, aircraft, and rockets that defined the future of warfare and space travel. But it also raised difficult questions about ethics, accountability, and the price of progress. Today, Operation Paperclip remains a powerful reminder that even in victory, the line between right and wrong can blur in the race for power and knowledge.
Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods. The plan so shocking, even President Kennedy refused to sign it. Operation Northwoods was a shocking set of proposals developed by elements of the U.S. Department of Defense. Created during the height of Cold War tensions, these plans outlined ways to manufacture a casus belli, a reason to go to war, against Cuba by staging false flag attacks that could be blamed on the Cuban government. The proposals originated in the early 1960s after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion and amid growing concern about Fidel Castro's alliance with the Soviet Union. Senior military planners, seeking a pretext to justify direct U.S. military action, drafted a range of covert operations intended to influence public opinion and force international condemnation of Cuba. The suggested measures were extreme and deceptive. Fake terrorist incidents in U.S. cities, staged hijackings, the sinking of a boat filled with simulated Cuban refugees, orchestrated shootings, and even the fabrication of evidence of Cuban attacks on American aircraft. Some proposals called for the use of civilian casualties and the creation of phony Cuban terrorist acts, all designed to appear real to the American public and the world. Crucially, Operation Northwoods was never implemented. These plans were presented to civilian leaders, but they were ultimately rejected by the Kennedy administration. President John F. Kennedy and his advisors declined to authorize such deceptive operations, preserving a vital civilian check on military proposals. For decades, the existence of Northwoods was not widely known. When the documents were later declassified, the revelations shocked the public and historians alike, exposing how far some planners were willing to go in the name of national security, and how fragile democratic oversight can be in times of crisis. Operation Northwoods remains a stark example of the ethical and legal limits that must bind state power. It is a reminder that, even in moments of fear and strategic urgency, the deliberate fabrication of violence and the manipulation of public trust carry dangerous consequences. Consequences that democratic institutions must guard against. Operation Gladio. It's one of the most chilling questions of the Cold War. Who really pulled the trigger, extremists or the state itself? Operation Gladio. It sounds like a spy thriller, but it was real. A secret NATO network built after World War II, designed to fight from the shadows if the Soviets ever invaded Europe. Funded by the CIA and MI6, Gladio agents were trained to sabotage, spy, and lead resistance movements behind enemy lines. But over time, the mission took a darker turn. By the 1970s, whispers grew that Gladio operatives weren't just preparing for war. They were manipulating politics, carrying out assassinations, and staging false flag attacks to fuel fear and anti-communist sentiment. One chilling example: the 1980 Bologna railway bombing that killed 85 people. Extremists were blamed, but many suspect Gladio's hidden hand behind it. In 1990, Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti confirmed Gladio's existence, shocking Europe and forcing governments to quietly dismantle their own secret armies. To this day, no one knows how deep the network went, or how much control it really had. Operation Gladio remains one of the Cold War's darkest secrets, proof that sometimes the real war isn't fought on battlefields, but in the shadows of democracy. Operation Ajax. What if one secret CIA mission changed the Middle East forever, and no one even knew it happened? In 1953, the CIA and MI6 launched Operation Ajax, a covert coup that overthrew Iran's elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh.
Mossadegh had nationalized Iran's oil, ending British control. To Iranians, it was freedom. To Britain and the U.S., it was a Cold War threat. So, they struck back. Kermit Roosevelt, Jr., the grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt, led the operation. Newspapers were bought, riots staged, and generals bribed. Within days, chaos spread. On August 19th, Mossadegh was arrested, and the Shah returned to power, restoring Western control of Iran's oil. But that victory came with a price. The resentment it created would explode decades later in the 1979 Iranian Revolution, when the people overthrew the Shah and stormed the U.S. Embassy. Operation Ajax became the blueprint for CIA coups worldwide, proof that one hidden move can rewrite history for generations. Operation Cyclone. It was one of the CIA's costliest missions, a secret war that helped win the Cold War, but created enemies for decades. During the Cold War, America fought battles it never admitted, one of the biggest, Operation Cyclone. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. To Washington, it was a perfect chance to hurt Moscow, without firing a single U.S. bullet. The CIA launched Operation Cyclone, a plan to arm the Afghan resistance, the Mujahideen. Through Pakistan's ISI, billions in weapons and training poured in, including deadly Stinger missiles that could down Soviet helicopters. Afghanistan became the USSR's Vietnam. After 10 brutal years, the Soviets withdrew, and the U.S. claimed victory. But that victory came with a dark twist. The country was left flooded with weapons and warlords. Out of that chaos, extremist groups were born, ones that would later turn their guns on the very West that armed them. Operation Cyclone ended, but its consequences still shape the world today, proof that even secret victories can spiral out of control. Operation Mockingbird. This wasn't a war of soldiers. It was a war of words, headlines, and lies. During the Cold War, truth itself became a weapon. To control it, the CIA launched Operation Mockingbird, a secret mission to infiltrate and influence the world's biggest media outlets. Starting in the late 1940s, journalists, editors, and even news executives were quietly recruited. Through them, the CIA planted stories, spread propaganda, and shaped global opinion, all under the illusion of a free press. By the 1950s, the network had spread through major newspapers and broadcasters, turning journalism into a silent weapon of war. When the Church Committee exposed the program in the 1970s, outrage followed, and the CIA promised to end it. But decades later, one question still lingers. If truth was once weaponized, how sure are we that it isn't being used again? Operation Azorian, Glomar Explorer. 16,000 feet beneath the Pacific. The CIA tried to pull off the most impossible heist in history. In 1968, a Soviet submarine carrying nuclear warheads mysteriously sank deep in the Pacific, over 16,000 feet below the surface. To the CIA, it wasn't just wreckage. It was a gold mine of Soviet secrets. So they launched Project Azorian, a billion-dollar mission to steal the sub from the ocean floor without the Soviets ever knowing. Their cover? A fake deep-sea mining project. Their partner? Billionaire Howard Hughes. Their weapon? A massive ship, the Glomar Explorer, hiding a giant mechanical claw designed to lift the sub from the abyss. In 1974, the impossible began. For weeks, the claw reached into darkness, and it worked, halfway. A section of the sub broke apart during the ascent, but what they recovered, documents, equipment,
even crew remains, was priceless. When the secret leaked, the CIA responded with 5 chilling words: "We can neither confirm nor deny." That phrase, born from Project Azorian, became the symbol of modern secrecy, a reminder that even at the bottom of the ocean, the Cold War was never silent. Operation Chaos. This is the secret program that turned America's spy agency against America itself. In the chaos of the 1960s, war abroad, protests at home, the CIA made a shocking move. Instead of spying on enemies overseas, it turned its eyes on its own citizens. It was called Operation Chaos, a secret program launched in 1967 to hunt for supposed Soviet influence in U.S. protest movements. But the mission spiraled out of control. Agents infiltrated anti-war groups, intercepted mail, and built files on thousands of innocent Americans, journalists, students, even civil rights leaders. By the early 70s, the CIA had indexed over 300,000 names, all under the guise of national security. When journalists finally exposed it in 1974, outrage erupted. Congress revealed how deeply the agency had violated its own laws. Operation Chaos, a reminder that sometimes the real danger isn't the enemy abroad, but the power watching from within. Operation Mongoose. What if I told you the CIA tried to kill a dictator using seashells? After the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, the U.S. was desperate to erase its humiliation. Just 90 miles from Florida, Cuba's leader, Fidel Castro, stood defiant, backed by the Soviet Union. So Washington launched a secret mission, Operation Mongoose, a CIA plan to remove Castro by any means necessary. Officially approved by President John F. Kennedy, it became one of the strangest covert campaigns in history. Agents plotted everything: poisoned cigars, exploding seashells, even chemicals to make Castro's beard fall out. Nothing was too ridiculous if it meant toppling his regime. Hundreds of missions followed: sabotage, propaganda, psychological warfare, but none succeeded. Castro survived over 600 assassination attempts, turning every plot into a story of failure and paranoia. In the end, Mongoose didn't destroy Castro. It only pushed him closer to Moscow and helped spark the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world ever came to nuclear war. Operation Mongoose, proof that in the Cold War, even the craziest ideas were deadly serious.
If you enjoyed this, like, share, and subscribe for the next one.